Shadow of the Sith by Adam Christopher comes out on June 28th. I was lucky enough to read it early, and today I can talk about it. The story follows Luke and Lando on their mission to track Ochi of Bestoon as the Jedi Hunter himself seeks to capture a very special family for the Sith Eternal. Here are my thoughts on the book, and I'll keep it all spoiler-free. I'll start by saying this is exactly the kind of book I've been hoping to see now that the sequel trilogy is finished. For years after the Disney acquisition, I've felt like the novels got pushed aside in favor of the films, which is understandable. The biggest stories should be on the big screen. But I also missed the Star Wars Legends days where books got to tell stories that felt big and important and featured the major characters. While I enjoy books like Phasma and Tarkin and Thrawn and Rebel Rising, they all felt like they were supporting the films by simply providing the backstory for one character. Don't get me wrong, Shadow of the Sith definitely still fills in some gaps of the sequel trilogy, but this time we're getting to follow Luke and Lando. This story feels bigger and more important, and gave me that feeling of what it was like to read Legends books back in the 90s and 2000s. I had a blast reading it. Lando and Luke are a fun pair-up that we don't get to see together enough. Lando's materialistic, flashy side bumps up against Luke, the stoic and minimalistic Jedi. They are very different people, but they have a deep friendship, and I liked their interactions together. Beyond that, Lando is a grounding presence for Luke. For Lando, the race to find this family before Ochi does is personal. His own daughter was kidnapped years ago, and he wants to help another family avoid the same fate. For Luke, the quest is more about the big picture. He hears whispers of the Sith coming back, and that becomes his focus. Not to say the big picture of stopping the Sith isn't important, but a Jedi should also make sure they are helping the people in need right in front of them. Luke and Lando have a bit of conflict in their priorities, but in this case, helping the family is a fight against the Sith. Obviously, Luke doesn't know that, there's no way he could, but I think we're seeing the dangers of getting lost in the big picture and losing sight of your duty to simply help people. As with many things in Star Wars, there needs to be a balance between the two. Swapping over to the dark side, I would say there are two primary villains, Ochi and the mysterious masked figure from the cover. I liked them both quite a bit. Ochi is very much in line with his characterization in the Darth Vader comics, if you've read those, but the masked figure is super cool. I don't want to talk too much more about them yet, because I don't think I can without spoilers, but they were a highlight of the book for me. Both villains are seeking the path to Exegol. That's what's driving them towards their goals. They think they will find some level of restoration there. They have a singular and obsessive focus on regaining something they've lost. Meanwhile, look at Lando, who lost his daughter. His loss is immense, and yet he is willing to put all his focus into a family he doesn't even know so they can hopefully avoid that same fate. We all lose things in life. The light side learns from their losses so they can move forward and maybe use their wisdom to help others. The Sith in the dark side can become consumed by fear of that loss or by the drive to reclaim what they think should be theirs. Shadow of the Sith shows how that drive can become addictive until it's all you know. I also think it's a nice touch that the two villains are not Sith, but are very much affected by their influence, or shadow, if you will. The last big positive I want to point out for this book is that it felt very rewarding to me as someone who has tried their best to take in every Star Wars book and comic over the past 7 years or so. There are a ton of cool connections to other stories. Some of them people have already guessed. Some of them really surprised me. One of them made me put the book down and just go, whoa, because it was totally unexpected. If you're a canon junkie, this is a very fun book to read. Okay, let's hop into some stuff that didn't work for me as well. I feel like most Star Wars books take me a second to get into. It's often like riding a roller coaster where you need the build up at the start, and then once you get over that hump, everything picks up speed, and I get more and more into the story. I kinda had the opposite experience in Shadow of the Sith, and I think that's because, unfortunately, in the case of this story, we know the outcome. I'm not going to spoil any of the details of how we arrive at that outcome, but we know what happens in The Rise of Skywalker. So for me, the start of the book was way more intriguing and exciting. We learn a lot of cool new stuff, we're catching up with characters we haven't really seen at this point in time, it's fast-paced, and it hits hard right out of the gate. And I'm definitely someone who thinks a story story is more about the journey than the destination. Just because you know a character's fate doesn't mean there isn't something worthwhile to learn about them. I still agree with that, but as we approached more and more familiar territory within the book, I found myself less excited than I was at the start. That said, I do think Adam Christopher uses the fact that we know some of what will happen to his advantage. He can really twist the knife and make everything feel even more tragic. Next, I want to address some criticisms I think will be leveled at Shadow of the Sith, because I saw people talking about how this is just Disney's attempt to fix the sequel trilogy or The Rise of Skywalker or whatever. Yeah, Rey's parents are major characters in this book. That's already been revealed in excerpts, and I do think part of the pitch for the story was probably to demystify and simplify who Rey's parents were, and specifically her father, who was Palpatine's son, but not really, he was a clone. I said earlier in this review that Shadow of the Sith does fill in some gaps for the sequel trilogy, but this is nothing new. Star Wars has always done stuff like this. Darth Plagueis, one of the most celebrated Star Wars books within the fandom, does a lot to answer some of the lingering questions surrounding the prequel trilogy. Questions that you don't need answered to understand the emotional story behind the prequels, but questions fans who are into the lore are interested in. This is the exact same situation. You don't need to know about Palpatine's clone son in The Rise of Skywalker to understand Rey's emotional journey. So I don't agree at all that Shadow of the Sith is some desperate attempt to fix any other story. I do agree that it partially exists to answer some questions fans like me have, and that aspect of the book did work for me. As someone who did not want Palpatine to come back in The Rise of Skywalker and was definitely baffled by the whole clone son thing, I caught myself perking up as I learned more about it. I don't think I'll ever be a fan of Palpatine's return in Legends or canon, but accepting that it happened, I can see that there is good storytelling potential around that idea. And that's just one piece of the book, and a small one at that. But Shadow of the Sith also has an emotional story of its own to tell, with some themes that I really enjoyed exploring, with Luke, Lando, Ochi, and that masked character that I'll talk about more in future videos, but not today. So, who would I recommend this book to? If you like reading Star Wars books in general, I think you'll feel very rewarded reading this one. If you loved Palpatine's return in the sequel trilogy, or have a desire to learn a little more about it, you'll get that here. If you're interested in tidbits of Sith lore, that was probably my favorite aspect of this book, and if you want a solid Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian adventure set in between episodes 6 and 7, that's exactly what this is. If you're interested in checking out Shadow of the Sith, you can pick up the audiobook for free on Audible. Just click on the link in the description or visit www.audibletrial.com/Star Wars Explained. The audiobook is out for pre-order now, and the production value on all the Star Wars books is very high with sound effects and music. It's like listening to a movie. Signing up for an Audible trial will get you a credit for one free book, and you can use it on Shadow of the Sith or just about any Star Wars book you can think of. Or get any book you want. The point is, you get a free book and you'll be supporting the channel when you do. But that's it for today. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.